Man, and I'm really, really excited because I think we've brought together a really diverse group of men to come in and speak to us. So I just want to go ahead and introduce them, and let's go ahead and get this show on the road. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Charles Stevens, founder and executive director of the Counter Narrative Project. I'd also like to introduce Mr. Wayne Pleasant, treasurer and CFO of 100 Black Men of Atlanta. Q Parker, founder of Brothers United, and Kwame Johnson, CEO of Big Brothers Big Sister of Metro Atlanta. Please give our panelists a hand. Y'all, just thank y'all. This is always my favorite part of my job because I get to feel like I'm in my living room. Maybe I'll do my best Ricky Lake later when I pass on the program. But we just want to have a fun, easy conversation. But what I want to start it off with, and here's again another opportunity for audience participation. Audience, I want y'all to shout their names into the space. Any black men in your life that have helped you get to where you are. Mentors, partners, supporters, anybody who's been there to support you, to get you to this journey. I would love for us just to shout their names out into the space. Just shout them out for me. Yes. Good. Don't stop. Don't stop. There's a lot of Mary McClinton, Kenny Leon, Martin Luther King. I heard that. This stuff. Yes. I think it's always good that we ground ourselves, especially for the ancestors. Let them know that we still care about them, that they're still here walking amongst us. And that we started. Gentlemen, by way of introduction, and I'll pass this mic on, shout out a couple of men or community members who have helped you get to where you are.
Joseph Harris, James Baldwin, and Joseph Bean. I'm Charles Stevens, founder and executive director of the Counter Narrative Project.
My name is Wayne Pleasant. I'm the CFO of the 100 Black Men of Atlanta. I would say Joseph Lowry, Larry Johnson, and Martin Luther King. I've never met him.
Q Parker, founder of Brothers United of Atlanta. I would say my father, Quintus Parker, James Baldwin, Muhammad Ali.
Kwame Johnson, President and CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters. Happy to be here. I would say Q Parker, my big brother right here. Stokey Carmichael, who I was named after. Robert Woodson got me my first job in nonprofit.
Keeping it right there, Kwame, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So I've been working on the behalf of young people my whole career. I left Hampton when I was 19. My parents thought I was crazy because it took a lot to even get to Hampton. When I was 17, I was behind bars for making some dumb decisions. And I met a lot of young people. One that comes to my mind often is Alvin, who would get in fights all the time and go to the hole. And I've seen a lot of men lose their minds going to the hole. I think many of you all saw when they see us and the effects that can have on young black men. I was in jail around that same time in upstate New York, and Alvin, said to me something I'll never forget. He said, Kwame, your father comes to see you every week. He said, my father's in the next unit, and I met him here for the first time. So that sparked my journey. I met a guy named Bob Woodson, who I just mentioned, who met at Hampton. He was speaking there, and he got me my first job in nonprofit. And from there, I've just been working on the behalf of young people here in Atlanta. As you know, we provide mentoring, relationships with young people, about 1,500 across the city, and we're trying to do more of that. And so that's why I do what I do.
My journey started at 17. I am a founding member of the Grammy Award Multi-Platinum Group 112. I am proud to say I am a native Atlantan, born and raised. I'm a Grady baby. Yeah, we clap for that. But growing up in Atlanta, I've seen too often a lot of the people that I grew up with either incarcerated, turned to the streets, but wasn't able to take the gift and their talent to provide an opportunity for them to get away from where we grew up. And so I realized that me being blessed with the gift of song wasn't just to make people happy when they listen to the music, but as I continued to rise in notoriety and fame and celebrity, be able to take that and use it in a way to influence my own community and my own people. And so about 4 years ago, I started the Q Parker Legacy Foundation, and the first organization under the under the foundation was Brothers United of Atlanta, because I see too often men not being able to have a safe space to externalize their feelings and their thoughts. It's a lot of pressure being just a man, specifically a black man in this world we live in. And no one understands what that journey is like another man. And so Brothers United of Atlanta is an organization that we come together once a month, every third Tuesday, with our partner, Big Brother, Big Sister. And imagine a room full of men there to leave the accolades, leave the letters behind your name out the door. But when you come in that room, you're just amongst brothers and men. And so we've been able to provide a safe space, a space of confidentiality, and a space of confidence, so that every man in there can leave better than they came. And a lot of times the difference of that is just simply being able to talk about what he's been carrying for today, a week, and years. And the beauty of our meetings is to see a man come in heavy laden and heavy burden, and then to leave just like he's turned 3 shades lighter, simply because he's been able to just talk about what he went through and what he's going through and not be judged, because the man next to him is either going through it, has been through it, or it is a preventative measure for the next man to not. And so that is Brothers United of Atlanta. That is Q Parker.
My name is Wayne Pleasant. Once again, I'm with the 100. I'll start off and say there's seasons for reasons in life, and this is a new season for me. And I'll start with saying that by, I'm from Camden, New Jersey, probably one of the most impoverished places in the U.S. for a very long time. I'm fortunate, and I thank God for blessing me to get out of poverty. My father killed himself when I was 5 years old after getting out of Vietnam. My mother had a nervous breakdown. The following week, my mother was raped in front of me, and I was put into the foster care system, both me and my brother. And we made it out through mentorship. And I say seasons for reasons because God put the right people in my life at the right time. And I'm blessed. I have a great corporate job. I've had businesses, and I've been successful. And not through my own doing. I think I give it all to God and putting the right people in my life. And I say seasons for reasons. This is my season now to pull others up that have gone through something. Maybe not as bad as mine or worse, because my plight in life is no different than anybody else's plight. It's just something that's happened to me. And as a man now, I realize it's my duty and my job to give back. And as a result of that, I've been with the 100 for 1 year. And when I say God is good and I'm blessed, I've been donating to a 100 for a long time. But to be in an organization 1 year and be elected to this role for such a prestigious organization, I know God is doing great things in my life. And I really believe that this organization and walking with the big brothers and sisters and anything in the community where folks can take advantage of working with black men that have gone through something and let them know that anything is possible. I have that voice, I have that passion to help people, and I believe that you can do anything. And 100 is just one pillar in the community to help kids achieve that.
I'm Charles Stevens. I'm also an Atlanta native, a Grady baby. I grew up in Southwest Atlanta. And one of my great joys has been to be able to found my organization in Atlanta, because it was my opportunity to give back to a city that gave so much to me. And I founded the Counter Narrative Project for 3 reasons. One is because I wanted to be able to bring my passion for art and my passion for social justice together and not feel like they had to compete. 2, I didn't see narratives and I didn't see reflections of myself that uplifted me, that affirmed me in the world, that made me feel good about myself. And so I believe that the Counter Narrative Project could do that work. 3, I founded the Counter Narrative Project because so many of the injuries and stories facing black gay boys, particularly men, did not also follow political action, did not follow resistance, did not follow some course of action to correct that, and I wanted to create a space for that. And finally, I founded the Counter Narrative Project because it was in many ways a tribute and love letter for the people that came before me and that made my existence possible.
In my short time in Atlanta, I've been really blessed to kind of to work with all your organizations. My wife and I have been members of Big Brothers Big Sisters before, and trying to find more ways to get involved in Atlanta. I've been to a couple of Brothers United meetings. Charles reached out to me right before I moved to Atlanta, and day 2, and allowed me to get some artistic projects. And I'm still waiting on my invitation from 100 Black Men. So whenever you guys want to, you can find my card. I'll get you my contact information anyway. But this ain't about me. Oh, so gentlemen, I want you all, and whomever wants to speak, let's just talk about some men, whether they that are too important for history, the sands of time to forget about them. And just uplift somebody. You all mentioned some of those names in the beginning, but who are men that are too important for us to gloss over and let the sands of time forget about them?
Growing up in the city of Atlanta, a lot of times our young Black boys gravitate to sports and athletics. And so if they are around something a lot of the time, and the majority of their time, I like to identify someone or some people who have made tremendous accounts of bravery, individualism, courage, and history. And so when I think about those things, Muhammad Ali always comes to mind, because not only was he the greatest, not only was he great at what he did, but he stood for something. And he was willing to give it all away to not lose his identity. And we know so often, coming up in the ranks, sometimes your desire to want to get from the hood, or you want to get away or provide for your parents, or make a life better for your family, will supersede your morals, your values, and what you just genuinely and generally stand for. And so when you tell the story of Muhammad Ali, yeah, he was a great fighter. He was great in the ring. He was great in terms of using the media to promote his narrative and what he wanted to say. But when you look past the actual action of what he did, the sport, right, boxing or whoever else, look at the man that he was. And so, for the little young man that's coming up into in athletics, we say to him, not only be great at that, but who are you as a man? Because you can also have the life that kind of goes along with the actual gift that you're providing and performing daily. And so when we talk about Muhammad Ali, he's always somebody on top of my list, especially when we're talking to young men, because they're easy to identify his life and the sports, athletics, to now propel the man that they will become. And he did a great job, because now we know Muhammad Ali not only as just a great athlete, but also somebody who historically stood the test of time and who stood for something. And it's somebody that we're all proud to say he was one of us and he stood for us.
Yeah, I was thinking about a number of different names, and the first name would be Michael R. Hollis, which is a local name. I grew up in Syracuse, New York, probably one of the furthest northern cities you could get to. Actually gets the most snow than any other city in the country. And growing up in the north, all the different leaders around me were always white. My principal was white, my city council members were white, my mayor was white. Everybody of influence in the north primarily was white. And coming to the south was very different. And I think sometimes young people take that for granted who grew up here, that your mayor, your city council members, your superintendent, all these different leaders are black. That's not the case in every place. Michael R. Hollis, many of you all probably know, went to Booker T. Washington High School and was the first African American to own an airline. And he started it in 1984. It's called Air Atlanta. And I bring that up because I don't think a lot of young people know that we used to do that we used to own hotels in every city, major city, that the marriage rate was good in the black community. And a lot of that has changed. So that's the first name that comes to mind. The second, who I'm named after, Stokely Carmichael, I bring up because he made some bold moves. Many of you all know that Stokely was a Black Panther, civil rights leader, taught at Howard University, and eventually came up with this brilliant idea that we should all go back to Africa. And he actually did it. And when he went back to Africa, he changed his name to Kwame Ture. And my name is Kwame Ture Johnson. And I bring that up because I think we need to make bold moves. Whether you agree with that philosophy or not, I've sort of been on the fence about it. But in today's society, with all this going on, it almost makes you think about, man, maybe he was right. You know, maybe we would have been better off if we would have did that, and we could have got a lot much further. But to get out of the situations we face today, where growing up in Atlanta, it's harder to get out of poverty than any other city, we got to make some bold moves. So I'm honored to be on this panel with these brothers. We collectively represent organizations that serve thousands of young black kids across Atlanta. Thousands. And we've been doing this work for a long time, and in many ways we've been sort of doing work in our own spaces.
But when you think about Martin Luther King, he actually has a day designated to him. When you can put yourself behind something for the greater good of other people, and I did that in my life with my mother and my brother to lift me up so that I'd have people. And when I found that out about C.T. Vivian, I actually had the opportunity to talk to him. To me, I mean, oddly enough, believe it or not, no discredit of Martin Luther King, that man is an awesome man. And he's still living and breathing today and breathing his story and Martin Luther King and everything like that. C.T. Vivian is an amazing man, and I have great respect for him. And I'm just learning his story at, 41 years old? Look him up. You'll be amazed that, when they call him one of his greatest lieutenants, he's a lieutenant,
So how many folks have heard of the March on Washington, 1963 March on Washington? How many of us heard of that? Okay. How many people have heard of Bayard Rustin? Okay. So Bayard Rustin was the organizer for the March on Washington. And he was the organizer of the March, the 1963 March. He was also a black gay man. And that's extraordinary in and of itself. But what's also extraordinary to me is that Dr. King and John Lewis and many of the other civil rights luminaries of that era supported Bayard Rustin because actually there was a lot of controversy with him being the organizer. There were folks that didn't want him to be the organizer because of who he was. And Dr. King and many of those leaders still stood behind him and said, no, he will be the March. Now, he had to be the deputy organizer. A. Philip Randolph actually ended up being the sort of figurehead, but Bayard Rustin was ultimately the organizer. And why that's significant is that so often when we hear stories about black men, in particular, we hear stories about black men are horribly homophobic, and black men, like that narrative over and over again. And that's part of the story. But the other part of the story is that there have always been black men that have been allies, and there have always been black men that have supported LGBTQ rights as well, and we don't hear that story enough, and that's what I appreciate most about the Bayard Rustin part of our legacy.
Quick sidebar, some of you all know, the NBA draft was on Thursday, and they did like this video series where a lot of these kids are born in the 2000s and late 90s, and they were asking them, like, can you identify Sister or a Nintendo or Easy Bake Oven, and all of them failed. But what hurt me the most is that they failed when they couldn't identify Outkast. And I really want to just, I want to shout out Andre and Big Boy just quickly because as a Southern black boy, I grew up in Tallahassee, Florida. Outkast meant so much to me. I found people telling our story, telling it in a very poetic way, but changing the game, changing my understanding of rap music, changing my understanding of using art as a means to tell story, but to be deliberate about it and to use it to change people's hearts. And the way Andre 3000 has just carried himself has meant so much to me as a person. So I want to make sure that I just lift those brothers up, because I walked around and I saw some kids born in the 2000s in the audience, and y'all please know who Outkast is. Do not be like those future millionaires, those NBA players that don't know who Outkast are. Huh? I don't think they knew Goody Mob either, which would make me sad too, or anybody in the Dungeon family. I want to talk a little bit about, Charles, because you hit on it, but I want to talk about the ways in which we need to, let me switch. I want to talk a little bit about physical and mental awareness, and just want to start thinking about resources available to Black men to support one another in that physical and mental space. I also want to bring it back out to the audience for a second. If those of you all, if you have questions that you've been writing them down as you think about them, that's the reason why we gave you those note cards in the beginning, those golf pencils. Here's an opportunity to pass those things forward. We got a couple people who are going to walk around and help collect any of those note cards. So if you have a note card, just go ahead and hold it up. Here's an opportunity. If you have a question that you want and you don't want to wait till the question and answer section, here's a moment. So panel, just back to you all, can we talk about just, because I feel like mental health has been such a stigma in the Black community, and I think we always, there's this stereotype of the strong Black man, and he's not heavy, he's my brother, right? Like in these velvet paintings of a Black man carrying the world on his shoulder, right? But so many of us go through pain, so many of us hurt, not just mentally, but also physically. What resources have you all found in your journeys that have been helpful or that people have put you on? And what are the ways in which we can kind of destigmatize the issues around seeking health and seeking wellness and seeking support?
I would say this one for me hits home. So, both my mother's mentally ill, my father killed himself. So, knowing those facts early on in my life, I've always seek counsel from other people and talking. And I'll start now versus talking about the past. The 100 has been odd for me because initially I started with the 100 to help other kids, but that little inner circle of men are invaluable to me, because when I'm going through something or thinking about something, because being in corporate America ain't easy for a Black man, being able to talk about things, being married ain't easy, and being able to talk to other Black men ain't easy. Being able to have a sounding board of checking myself, because I mean, sometimes your mental health ain't always right, and what you thinking ain't always, something they said in the play, my truth ain't your truth. And being able to have somebody regulate what you believe is true and may not be true, I think having that circle of men for me with the 100 has been invaluable. But I also, there's different organizations, Black men, and this hits home for me too, because Black men don't like to go to the doctor, get their blood checked, get their, I don't know how to say it the right way, but just get checked. How about that, brother? Getting checked. Champs, I don't know if you ever heard of an organization called Champs where they have screen health thing. I don't believe that just because you're impoverished that you shouldn't take care of yourself. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, ain't no way your life gonna ever really change. So I just say, connect with other men as the first resource, because it's cheap and it's free, but also be honest with yourself. And it's kind of hard to be honest with yourself, so connect with other people.
I always, whenever I do panels like this, I have to always give love to my father, because my father was the first man that I ever saw cry. He was the first man that I ever heard apologize. He was the first man that I saw sacrifice himself to make sure food was on the table. And he was the first man to sit me down and just talk about his issues. And so when we talk about mental health, the first stage of any of this is being able to communicate and being able to verbalize what it is you're actually going through. And so the reason why Brothers United was formed, and it's so special to me, because sometimes this is the first step for a brother to just even hear himself verbalize, hey, I'm truly struggling with something. And the community that we've created allows for even more conversation to continue, because the room is very open, the room is very comforting and supportive. And so if you're going to even go to the next step of seeing somebody professionally, it has to start within the small groups. That's why small groups are so important. So if there's any organization out here, whether it's BBBS, Brothers United, 100 Black Men, or whatever the case may be, the objective is to get men just talking, period. Just get them to just start verbalizing and expressing themselves. I also believe that once you get to the point where you want to seek professional help, I think that the person that you go to has to be somebody who knows the story, who knows the journey. And no offense to nobody else out here, but I think if you're going to seek professional help, it has to be somebody that looks just like me. I'm going to sit in front of somebody that looks just like me, because the moment I walk in the door, it's some things that's gonna already be understood. And we all know what's understood don't need to be explained, right? So we all know that. And so when you get to the point of saying, I now realize I need to go and talk to a professional, look within our own community.
I guess I have two takes on it. The first take is, I think the starting point of the conversation around Black men in health also has to address racism in the health system. You know, we talk about things like Tuskegee, like Henrietta Lacks, and like they're myths as if they were made up, but these are historical things that happen. So there's a reason why there's so much trauma that we have in the healthcare system that ends up being a barrier, and I think we have to get at that. So in other words, healthcare institutions need to hold some of the accountability for why it's difficult for Black folks sometimes to access healthcare. So that's part of my slant. The other piece is my organization, the Counter Narrative Project. We actually have a YouTube show called Revolutionary Health. And it's like a 30-minute YouTube show, and we talk about various health topics. So we've talked about diabetes, we've talked about heart disease, we've talked about prostate health and prostate cancer, we've talked about HIV, and we've talked about like these various health topics because, you know, what I realized is that I couldn't find a lot of resources that spoke directly to me as a Black man, particularly a Black gay man, that really delves with health. Like the men in my family didn't talk about prostate cancer, even though that's something that my family experiences. We never talked about heart disease. So we have this YouTube show. You could look it up on YouTube. I think it's the youtube.com/counternarrative. So check it out. And so that's a resource.
I got a lot of questions. All right, I want to spend a little bit of time kind of answering some of these before moving on with questions I had. This question wants to know about the lack of intergenerational representation on this conversation. I want you all to know that it's not lost on me. Invitations were sent out. Unfortunately, we didn't get some of my elders, brothers, to respond back. So I do apologize for that, but we want to make sure that we lift that up in this space, and that we, if you have questions specifically about that, let's make sure that we ask that. But we will make sure that we have better represented in the future. Here's one that I really enjoyed. As a Black man in 2019, given all that's happening politically, what advice would you give Black women in support of Black men as their husbands, partners, brothers? Let's talk a little bit about the ways in which men need support from the women in their lives and whatever roles that they play. Is anybody interested in? I tried to phrase that in a way that did not set anybody up, but so the ways in which we need support. Don't tell nobody what to do. Just say, here's a way in which I can be supported, all right? Again, 'cause all of us have to go home to somebody, and whether it's their sister, whether it's their lover, or something like that, do not get yourselves in trouble. I love my wife, Lauren, and I love my daughter, Journey. Just want to make sure that that is already out there before y'all answer this question.
Yeah, I'll go first. So I guess I can just give, my wife is not here, so I guess I can talk a little bit more freely than some of the other brothers up here. But I I think it's just understanding communication and risk-taking. And, you know, I moved here about 4 years ago from DC, and at the time, I had a 2-year-old, we had a 2-year-old, and to move to Atlanta from DC was a big, you know, risk we were taking. And, you know, I told my wife I had this opportunity in Atlanta to trace my dreams, to run a nonprofit, have been working in nonprofit in every role from, you know, starting at the bottom and to being a CEO. And she said, let's do it. She gave up her career and supported me. So that kind of support enabled me to grow my career and be successful with all the challenges that we face. I think communication is what continues to keep us together and working together and making sure we talk about tough issues that come up. But her, you know, what stands out to me is her taking that chance and giving up sort of her career to support me in my career was really important.
One word for me, and that word is affirmation. Women, wives, sisters, aunts, cousins, please understand how important your words are to men. We all know that the tongue can breathe life or death, but specifically a woman's tongue is very, very, very powerful. And being married for 16 years, I truly understand, and I had to sit down with my wife and have this conversation, and sometimes it was tough. As a man, we wake up with just so much just waiting on our feet to plant the ground from getting out of the bed. So much is waiting on us. And the one thing that can really combat that and get us in the right mindset is our woman saying, no, you got it, baby. Today you're gonna close this deal. Thank you for being a provider. Thank you for your efforts. I appreciate this, or whatever the case may be. Understanding that you have the power to ignite a man's objectives, the energy, and just his decision on whether today I want to even try or, man, I'm just going to throw in the towel. It's nothing like the woman putting the battery in her man's back. Because I'm going to tell you, if he's already determined, when you speak into him, his level goes up to 1,000. So please understand just that key right there, that affirmation is so important. And it don't matter how much he make, even if you're the breadwinner, still affirm him. Still affirm him, because the moment he feels like I'm not necessary, then that's when the negative thoughts are going to seep in. That's when I just want to give up. So the words are very, very, very critical, and it can determine the life and the death and the efforts in which your man wants to even contribute for that day, that season, that year, or whatever the case may be. Women, y'all have the power. You have the power. You have the power. And I'm telling you, I'm talking from experience, because there are days when my wife simply just say, baby, you look great today. I walk out of that house feeling like, oh, I'm the shit. Now, I could already look in the mirror and think that I look great today, but when she says it on top of what I already thought, what? If she says, baby, you got 2 meetings today? Yeah, I got 2 meetings, da-da-da-da. I can't wait to hear how successful they were. You already got that. Don't even worry about that, because you got that. I know you got it. Man, that stuff, I'm telling y'all ladies, it goes a long, long way. Affirmation.
Man, I was gonna say appreciation, but I like the word affirmation better. I do everything he says. For me, and you make me think about my topic a little bit different. I'll just say this, and I say this to my wife all the time, and I think I've been with my wife for 10 years, married 14 years together, and I mean, you just stole my whole story. But I will say this, and I'll keep it real simple. And I say this to my wife all the time. Doing the things you want to do for me, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's not as important the things that I want you to do for me when I ask you to do it. Because as being the provider, protector, and lover, I do things that I don't want to do all the time, but I do it because it's my duty. And I think we've evolved in this space, me and my wife, and I say this only, it is so important when I ask my wife to do something she doesn't want to do, and when she does it, I appreciate her so much more, because a lot of times I can't do it all. And that's what we are there for each other for, is to be able to do what we can't do for each other for ourselves, depending on what's going on. It is a union, and I just say to women, doing the things that a man wants you to do that you may not want to do is so important, and if you can take yourself out of it and think about what it means to the union, then I think marriages are a lot stronger that way.
Not sure if I said it already, but I love my wife Lauren and my daughter Journey. Q, answer this question for us real quick. Where are meetings held for Brothers United on third Tuesdays?
Yes, every third Tuesday of the month we have an incredible partner with Big Brother, Big Sister of Atlanta. And so we are there on the corner of 17th and P Street every third Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. And just to give you an idea of how a Brothers United of Atlanta session goes, we meet at 7 o'clock and we break bread, we have dinner. What better way to get guys opening up than give them some food? Because a lot of men are coming from work. And so we break bread, we go over our announcements. The pillars of Brothers United of Atlanta are health, wealth, social, spirituality, and fatherhood. And every month we have either a keynote speaker or someone within the organization to speak on one of those topics. And the last hour of our session is just really a think tank. It's just everybody just diving in. This is when we call it our live sessions. And no matter what's on your heart or on your mind, this is the opportunity to allow the brotherhood to really walk us through whatever is going on. And a lot of times, it's so funny that when one is going through something, it may just be the season that a lot of the men are actually going through at the same time. And so we're able to love each other through it, encourage each other through it, motivate each other, and just love through it all. So again, that's every third Tuesday at the facility of Big Brother, Big Sister.
Thank you. We got about 20 more minutes of this panel conversation before we open it up to a more formal question and answer. So here's an opportunity if you need to take care of any needs and stuff like that. The bathrooms are out there to the left. Just want to make sure I said that since we've been here about 90 minutes. We talk a lot about how important social spaces are, Black safe spaces, especially for men. We talk about places like the barbershop, our fraternities, 100 Black men, any of our social spaces. But the truth is that those spaces aren't always safe for all Black men, right? Like there are some of us that walk into there, and whether it's because we didn't grow up as part of that culture, whether those spaces have historically been charged and filled with toxic masculinity or whatever, like all of us don't always feel safe in there. Like I'm a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, the best fraternity ever incorporated. But, for me to act like that my fraternity has always been great to all of my brothers would be a fallacy, right? And I think anybody who's a member, this is Atlanta Greek Picnic Weekend, but anybody who's a member of a Black Greek organization might have a similar story. I want to know from you all, what are the things that we can do to make sure that the spaces that we say are safe for Black men are really safe for all Black men? Like, what are the ways in which we can build unity, build collaboration, be more inclusive, so that when we talk about a brotherhood, when we talk about that, we really can be brothers in fullness?
Well, I'll just start it off. A lot of the positions that men take is through ignorance and the lack of knowledge. We'll have a stance on something just from what we heard somebody else say. And so the first thing I would say is educate ourselves and educate yourself on why you're standing the way that you're standing. The second thing I'd say is men have to understand that at the end of the day, I'm a Black man. No matter what my sexual orientation is, no matter what side of the track I come from, at the end of the day, we still have somewhat of the same story. And if we're all able to get to that space, it makes the barbershops, It makes all of these other locations easier for the conversations to even take place. When I can look across the walkway, or if I can look next to me, I don't see Kwame Johnson for him being incarcerated and now becoming president of Big Brother, Big Sister. I don't see any of that. The first thing I see is, this is my brother. This is another black man. So although I don't have the same story as he has, there's some similarities that we just cannot get away from. And if we enter each conversation in each space with that in mind, I think it allows for the room to be comfortable, because in order for a man to open up, he has to be comfortable.
I would say that slavery really messed with men's confidence. And we still struggle with that today. So it's broader to me, in my opinion, than a space. I think in general, black men struggle with confidence issues. And I think that's why that affirmation point is very important. It's hard for us to say, it's hard for me to say, Q, I love you. Or Charles, I love you. We, in many ways, put up a defense when we walk out the door. I meet black men all around the city at different events, and in a lot of ways, I meet their representative. They meet my representative. We talk about we're gonna get up, we're gonna have a drink, we're gonna get a meeting, and that's a representative. So I think until we fundamentally get over that sort of confidence issue that we face, whether it's a gay man, a straight man, we're gonna continue to not connect with each other in a real way. And I think it boils down to that confidence. And I can say at Brothers United meetings, we leave all that at the door, and we become vulnerable. And sometimes it's hard for black men to want to be vulnerable, because we're always forced to fight and be strong and be tough all the time. It's just part of how we were brought up. So I think it's that confidence piece, and if we can get over that, I think some of the other challenges based on how a person is or what they're into can go away as well.
Yeah, it's so funny, we all think of the same way. And I frame it as I call demasking. And I tell a story about my brother-in-law when I first met him. And he's older than me, about 20 years. And we're talking on the phone a long time. We just started like connecting. And he hung up the phone and said, "Love you." And I was like, the heck? It like threw me off, like, you know. And now I've been married to my wife I've been with my wife for 14 years. And I get out there, I talk to him or whatever. He was like, about 2 months ago, he was like, I hung up the phone and I said, "I love you." And then he called me back joking. He was like, "Man, we have evolved." And I wanted to tell that because, Kwame, I totally agree with you, because you put on this mask, but it's nothing like to feel free, to be who you are, as I like to say it. And I think, kids are amazing. I have a stepdaughter, and I always tell her, I meet you where you are, because if you can't meet somebody where they are, you can't help them. I'm just reiterating what these guys said, just giving you a storyline behind it, but I agree. I think demasking, being who you are, is a very important thing, and in order to create safe spaces, you gotta first deal with that.
I guess from my perspective, safe spaces aren't just about not hurting someone's feelings, right? I also think that there are realities of violence that happen. I think about Michael, this guy named Michael that was found in Piedmont Park a few years ago with a noose around his neck. And when people thought it was a lynching, there was so much outrage and rallying and love and support, and we got to do something, and what are we going to do? But then they found out it was a suicide, and he committed suicide because he was experiencing homophobia in his family. It broke him, quite frankly. So I think on some level, there is a conversation about vulnerability and a conversation around acceptance, and don't say the wrong things, and don't hurt my feelings, and don't use these words. I mean, that's part of it too, because those are powerful. But there's also, in the spirit of being inclusive, there's also a conversation about emotional, physical, and psychological violence, especially when we deal with young people. We don't yet have a world where black boys can be free however they show up. We're not there yet. I believe we can get there. I think that's part of where we need to get, as is the case with Black men. But I think part of that is also really, well, one, telling the truth about what's happening, two, rethinking not just it's part of it, right? How we treat each other, respect, and those things. Those are important. I don't want to minimize that. But there's also, and I see this in my work time and time again. I had one of the worst experiences I ever had is that I met with a young Black man who was like 20 years old, and his boyfriend's father caught them sleeping together, and he poured boiling hot water on both of them. Boiling hot. So I sat with this young man on his couch. This is about a month after it happened, and I'm seeing his skin, and I've never seen nothing like that before. Have y'all ever seen burned Black skin? Like you're talking to someone, and I'm sitting here. He's 20 years old, skin burned, scorched, and he's telling me that he can't go to sleep because he keeps having these nightmares about what happened. Like he can't sleep. He's traumatized. So again, this isn't let's beat Black straight men up. That's not what I'm doing. But what I am saying is that there absolutely needs to be a conversation about how we as Black men, how we love each other, how we treat each other, how we respect each other. But the conversation around safe space and inclusivity can't just stop with with words. We also have to really think about violence in a real way. And again, a spectrum of violence, right? Because I'm not trying to discount all the ways that as Black men we experience violence in our community. So I'm not trying to prioritize one form of violence over another. But what I am saying is that there are some specific things that we need to address.
I want you to just say for everyone, Black men loving Black men is...
So one of the people I named, one of the 3 J's I named that influenced me, one of those J's was Joseph Fairchild Bean. He was born in, he was a Philadelphian, writer, author, and activist, and he wrote this book. He edited this anthology called In the Life. Essay in the anthology, he has this line: "Black men loving Black men is a revolutionary act of the 1980s." And he's writing this line at the height of the Reagan era. He's writing this line after witnessing the MOVE bombing in 1986 in Philly. He's writing this line as he's witnessing HIV/AIDS starting to impact our communities. And I don't think for him it was just sexuality specific. I think he had a very broad vision of what it means for Black men to love each other, which I actually think speaks to some of what y'all was talking about.
And I just think that it's such a great thing. It's what we all just talked about, right? Black men loving Black men, right? Showing love, being able to be loved, and I think that's such an important thing. And I think this question speaks a little bit to what Kwame and what Charles were just talking about, because I think about Nigel. I believe is a young man's name, a young kid who committed suicide because of some of the homophobic derision and hate that he was receiving. But a question from the audience: why do you think it's important for Black men to give back and mentor young Black boys?
I always say that kids need to see it to achieve it. I also say that kids don't want to hear a sermon, they want to see one. And it's sometimes hard for the generation above me to sometimes to learn from that. I believe that if you think about snake anti-venom, if you get bit by a snake, they give you anti-venom. That actually has a little bit of venom in it. If you ever gotten allergy shots, and you gotten medicine for allergies, my allergies been messed up ever since I came to the South. They give you a little bit of that allergy to build up your resistance. If anybody's ever received an organ transplant, you have to take anti-rejection medicine because your body tries to reject an organ. That's why the doctor always tries to strengthen your immune system as the first thing to do. I say all that to say is that kids need to connect with someone that they can relate to. I can help a kid who's going through the same situation I went through because I've been there. And in particular, as you talk about Black men mentoring Black boys, there's no one else they're going to be able to relate to more than that. So I think it's super important. I'm proud of the partnerships we have here. On our waiting list, I have about 500 boys. 90% are Black boys. And if you think about Atlanta and kids who are struggling the most, it's young Black boys. So I'm honored that the mayor has partnered with us with all of us, to issue a challenge, a 100-men challenge, to get more men to step up to be mentors. There's a lot of men in the audience right now. I have a little brother. Q just became a part of our organization, is mentoring a young person. You know, that's what we all have to step into that void to fill that gap, because there's a lot of young boys that may not, need some huge intervention. May just need someone to come into their life and help them make the right decisions to get through what they're going through at that point in time. So I can go on and on about mentoring, but just want to put that out there.
And one of the things you said is you have to see it in order to be it. I never try to miss an opportunity to talk about just how important, Kenny was to me in that. Right? Kenny was the first black man I ever saw direct a play. At that point, I don't think I knew that black men were directors. And he poured into me. And I'm really thankful to be in the space. But also Charles Randolph Wright and Mary McClinton. And it's about that thing, right? Like, I didn't know that this is something I could do until I saw it. So I just, what that is.
I'm gonna stand up so I don't cry. So y'all know this
and it's okay because we love each other in here. We're creating space for black men to be soft in all the right ways, not in a derogatory way.
This is a heartfelt topic for me. And Kwame, you said about black men mentoring black boys. My mentor was a white man, guidance counselor in my high school. I went to school, my clothes was all messed up, started my freshman year, and he knew a lot of my family members, but he didn't know my story. And he was a white man. I went to his college, he got me into college, and he helped my brother get into the Naval Academy, helped my brother, and I say it, I agree with you, Kwame, that even though that white man helped me, the world he lived in is a different world than I lived in. He gave me opportunities because he was white, and I got the opportunities because of him. But now, I believe it's my job to give another black kid like me the opportunities that I have as a result of that white man helping me. And not only that, it's kind of oddly, my brother, when I had to go to college, a white family took care of my brother. And I'm not just saying it's only black people can help black people. What I'm saying is, it's our duty as black folks, regardless of our generational struggle, that we help and lift each other up. And oddly enough, now that I met him and I know about this organization, we as men need mentors too. We need people to fall on, and mentorship is not just boy to man, it's man to man. And I stood up because this is something that I'm passionate about right now, and I'm learning. I've had success. Money's important. Don't get me wrong, but if all we leave in this world, that we made a lot of money, we created a family, but you didn't leave this place better than when you came into it, what was the point of being here?
One of my favorite quotes is by James Baldwin. He says that children are not very good at listening to their elders, but they rarely fail at imitating them. Crazy, right? So I think the work is dual. There's a responsibility for the men, but then also it goes a second step. Once you get it, then what are you going to do with it? Because my mindset is there's not an option. It's no option. It is our responsibility as men to leave everything we know, every experience, every piece of knowledge that we have to the next generation. And so if you are a black man, if you come up to be a part of Brothers United or any of these organizations, part of the work that we're going to do is rehabilitating your mind and getting you to actually think about who you were created to be, the king that you are, the man of excellence that you are. So once you can identify that, now you have something great to pass on to the next generation. So again, it's not a choice, it's not an option. It is the responsibility of us as men to pass along everything that we have attained all of the knowledge, all of the experiences, all of the failures to the next generation. Because remember, some of these young men that we're going to come in contact with, there is not a man present, nowhere in their lives, raised by women, and no discredit to the women who are put in the positions of raising young men. You guys do an amazing job. However, I will say, a young man needs to see a man. A black boy needs to see a black man. So that's why it's not an option. This is a requirement. This is what we have to do. This is what we were created to do, so that it continues to perpetuate, and now the legacy is being built.
Yeah, of course.
I'm part of the 100, and I know we talk about men so much, but I have a stepdaughter, and I'd be remiss not to say this. You got to, as a black man, I mean, I know it's our responsibility to lead, but I ain't never seen a black man that's successful that doesn't have a strong black woman behind him. And as a result of that, I say this, that it's very important for the black woman to recognize, even though the man is there and supposed to be the leader, you are a leader too. I believe me and my wife sort of like, because I don't tell my wife what to do. It's sort of, I trick her. But
She lets you trick her.
yeah, I don't be tricked. But what I say that is that black women, you are leaders too, and you should take that position at the helm beside your man, and because you have daughters, they watch you lead, and to think that only a man is a leader is not the truth. And I just want to say that here in this room, because that I'd be remiss not to say that, because a strong black woman is just as powerful as a strong black man.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, because we want to make sure that we aren't being unnecessarily exclusive about the ways in which we're talking about this, but we did want to make sure that we are speaking about the ways in which we talk to one another. But I do appreciate that, and I want to make sure that we say that. This is the last question that I ask before we lead into a more formal question and answer. But a question from the audience: how much is financial literacy playing a role in your organization? Right, because we have to recognize that part of the current situation that we as a community find ourselves in is maybe a lack of financial literacy, wealth management, wealth understanding, citizenship. But in your organizations, do you all ever talk about financial literacy?
I have a few takes on this question. One is around mentoring. I really hope that more, especially in the nonprofit sector, more nonprofit leaders mentor each other. I know when I started my nonprofit, and actually it's interesting, like, so in addition to my nonprofit, last month I started a for-profit entity, and so I had to open up a business account at a bank. And what I realized is, like, I don't have any, like, all my friends are nonprofit people. I was like, I don't have anyone to talk to about how to, like, what I should be asking and what to know and the different options. And I went to Citizens Trust Bank, actually, and they were really cool. But I just realized that it's a gap in so many ways. But I really believe that as leaders, especially nonprofit leaders, it's really important that we have conversations about fundraising, that we have conversation, that we share information about, like, what accountants are really great. And it's because I think that what ends up happening, and this has just been my perception, a lot of nonprofit, well, one is the perception that black nonprofit organizations are bad with the money, or that they have some kind of fiscal issues. Like, I hear that come up a lot. So there's already a stigma that some funders have about like donating and so forth, funding and so forth. And two, I just think it's just extremely important that, and I think you probably meant it more around, like, sort of individual, like, personal finance, but I think in terms of, like, business, from a business perspective, like, there are so many entrepreneurs that aren't, like, they don't have formal, like, business entities, and I just think that that's just something I'm really passionate about, and I hope it's something that we really talk more about.
So I often say that the fastest way out of poverty is through education. I say that all the time. And a couple of weeks ago, I met a guy named John Hope Bryant, and he has an organization called Operation Help. They do financial literacy. We partner with them. And he said the fastest way out of poverty is a good credit score. And I thought that was an interesting common. And he thought that, black folks, anybody poor, any depressed community could change their life through a good credit score. And if you think about that, you can do a whole lot with a good credit score. So we don't provide that service directly, but there are a ton of great organizations do financial literacy work. Actually, that was a recent topic at Brothers United, was financial literacy and how to get credit scores right and checking accounts and all that stuff. But I thought that was interesting, so I wanted to share it.
Well, I'll say, I guess I gotta talk about my wife. My wife works for Delta Community Credit Union. She's a loan officer. She's head loan officer. So she knows, I met her at the Delta Community Credit Union. And she always makes this quote, you got good credit, you can fake it till you make it. But at the 100, I'm actually trying to get her involved with working with putting together a program for the kids at the schools and just talking about just the ABCs of finances and somewhat, but start young and I think it matriculate through your youth, through your adulthood. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm trying to think for the 100. I mean, there's different ways to I don't know how to say this, but basically, as a black community, we all need to work together. And I think the strength of us tying together like we're doing up here today, I mean, financial literacy is here, and I think we can educate each other. I mean, I know, I'm trying not to get political here, that's why I'm struggling here, but I want to just say basically, work with each other, and I think there's a lot of organizations out there that are like us to help us, to tell us what to do with our money, and just never trust somebody to do something that you don't know anything about. Do what you know. That's the first place to start.
I do want to open it up for question and answer. I think there are mics down here, so I don't have to get my steps in. But one thing is really great is philanthropy. So if anybody or y'all are philanthropists out there, True Colors is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So we would gladly accept any of those dollars that you guys have invested so well. Continue to invest them with us. Again, want to just open it up for question and answer with our panel. Thank you all. You guys have been a really great audience, very attentive. If you can't come down to the mic, a mic will be brought to you.
I'm going to read this on behalf of someone in the audience.
Okay, that's
okay. Kwame's statement regarding slavery's effect on men's confidence is related to black women's tendency to be overly assertive. Black women have had to be on alert, be responsible to and for their own well-being. We must come together to understand this phenomenon. Can I get an amen?
Good afternoon. What's significant to me is to see all of you wearing wedding bands. That is kind of linked to the mask. You don't want to identify as being married men. So why are you still wearing your wedding bands? Is it a part of who you are?
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm wearing it because if I didn't walk out the house with it on, she'd have said something to me about it, first of all. But no, I'll just say this for me. I mean, I grew up without a mother and a father. To me, life was not about making a lot of money. It was about me fulfilling the circle. Even though I don't have any kids of my own through my wife, I love my stepdaughter like she's my own. When my wife, in our first year of marriage, she got cancer, and that's the reason why we don't have kids. But she was so concerned about not being able to have kids. I said, they leave. And I said, all you need to do is worry about you. We're gonna get through this. And so to answer your question, to me, this circle was basically a childhood fulfillment for me. And it ain't easy, I'll be honest, but I love her.
Well, the reason I wear my ring proudly is simply because I'm proud to be married to Charlinda Parker. We've been married 16 years, and another organization underneath the Q Parker Legacy Foundation is Couples United. We also meet at the facility of Big Brother, Big Sister. And it is really the same as Brothers United, a safe space for couples to come together and really just walk through the journey of being married. But growing up in the music industry where being married is not really publicized, I wanted to be the person to stand out front and just say, yes, you can be in the music industry, you can be a part of a male group, you can be considered a heartthrob or a sex symbol or whatever the case you may be, but also be proud to say that you are married. You never understand the amount of joy your woman or your wife will get knowing that there are so many that may be out to get you, but you're standing there in the middle of the fire representing the union that you agreed upon between God and her. And so that is the reason why I wear my ring proudly, because I know that there are people who will say that, well, you're in the music industry, so it's not necessarily customary to say that or normal to promote being married. But that's one of the reasons why we created Couples United, to really make being married cool again, and to make it to where men are necessarily proud, I would just say that, proud to say that I've committed my life to a life partner.
Thank you, brothers, for what you do. You're paying it forward for a lot of young men. And I'm actually going to go look into Brothers United. I was once a big brother, and I'm going to look into getting back involved with you guys. But one of my challenge as a single father of two young boys is trying to present, as you say, that image, that positive image. My battle is all the negative images that him and his brother face, you know, in school, this whole rap negative industry with, I mean, I grew up to rap, you know, I mean, I'm from New York, 1978, former rapper, all that stuff, but where the music is today and the imagery that they create for our young boys is just so negative. What advice do you give to myself, and how do you guys present that to the young boys so they can see that imagery and just see that it's an image that you don't have to follow, and there are other paths that you can take?
Well, thank you for that. I think you're doing it right now. You know, you got your son here with you right now, and you know, I'm not a rapper, but I had $20,000 at 17 and AK-47, and a lot of them talk about that. You know, so hopefully you'll see that, you know, that's not the right thing, and that this is the right thing to be up here doing that. You know, I think we need more of us out there, particularly folks like me who have a background in that, who kids gravitate to that lifestyle of money, drugs, and guns, and all that stuff. Me and Q just had a meeting the other day, and we're talking about getting some of those celebrities, some of those guys, to be a part of this. Because the reality is that's who they look to. And a lot of those guys are putting on a front to make money, but there are also a lot of guys out there who want to do the right thing. And if we can get them to come to the table and be on a panel like this, hopefully those young people will also see a different way. And that is, you know, it's cool as entertainment, but don't make that a whole lifestyle. Don't change your life for entertainment.
You know, and I also want to say that it's about storytelling too, right? Like, I mean, rap is story, right? Like, and I talked about my love for Outkast and the way in which they told stories. And I think what was important for me is that I found other storytellers, right? Like, there are storytellers that are telling great stories in books. They're in film and theater, of course. But I think we got to continue to encourage people to check and look for other stories in other ways. It's hard to compartmentalize. I was definitely, I know if Wynette Rogers was here, she would say, well, 20 years ago, you were out here saying you just listening to the beat and not really the words, you know, and the words kind of seep in. That only went for so long. But but I think, we gotta continue to just battle back those narratives. There are rappers, there are music that's out there that is about uplift, that is positive, and also there are other stories that we can try to find. So, Kamasi Washington is a great artist, and his music it can hold the same and fill in some of those same voids. There's a hand over there. I'm sorry, gentlemen, did anybody else want to respond to that?
Yes, my question actually goes to the previous one. It was about marriage, and this is for whether you're gay or straight. Do you feel like marriage continues to be a very relevant institution for stability in the Black community? And also like whether or not the young people you may work with or men that you collaborate with, if they are really interested in that. Seems to me sometimes it's not, but I know I might be, not seeing that. So I'm just curious, do you feel like that's still something that the people you come across or collaborate with, Black men, if that's gay or straight, if that is something that is still a relevant institution in the community?
I think the only thing I will say to that is partnership is, I think we talked about affirmation, right? Finding people in your life that affirm you, and whatever bond that looks like, whether it's a legal union in marriage and something like that, or whether it's something that is not as traditional. But I think affirmation and partnership seem to be super important, always will.
I had just read an article not too long ago about men that are in their 40s now and are somewhat successful, they would qualify successful. They tend to be married, basically, and I'm not saying that you can't be not married or divorced and not be successful. What I say, you tend to be married, and in my circle of friends, I can say, even though you talk all this and talk about the video stuff and all that, at the end of the day, you need somebody to counterbalance your ego. And I think being married does that for you.
There was a push a while back for workforce retraining programs. And so I worked with an organization that started to look at the data behind that and see which ones were effective or not effective. And we found in some cases many were not. As you guys are the CEOs and owners of your organizations, are there measures that you have in place that you look at to see whether or not your programs are truly effective? And how do we share that to the community so that we can show that these programs actually do work?
Yeah, so we're focused on kids who are 6 to 18, and then we are doing a handoff to other groups to do like workforce development or college scholarships. But we've primarily focused on 6 to 18, and our goal is to help kids get out of school, and over 90% of our kids go to next grade level, over 95% graduate on time, 99%, which is personally appealing to me, is avoid the criminal justice system, so 99%. So we have all that data on our website, and so we're really data driven. I think it's important for all nonprofits to do that.
Yeah, I think that working with a good evaluator is important as a way to just hold yourself accountable to what your vision and goals are. I also believe that, most organizations do this, it's important to put together some kind of annual report in some form just to be able to tell the story of the work that you've done across the year, and of course your stakeholders really want to see that. I also think that it's important to not only benchmark your success, but also celebrate your wins. And that's something that my organization hasn't been great about, but just really doing a good job of celebrating the wins, because it's hard. I think we're all engaged in really hard work and working with the amount of emotional labor that's required to do the work that we do. So to keep us, I think to keep focus and keep perspective is important to both be clear about what your goals, objectives, and activities are and how you measure whether or not you've successfully achieved those, but also have a plan for how you want to celebrate once you win.
Our Project Success program, we have a 100% graduation rate, but I think the more important statistic that we have right now is that we have 78% that go to 4-year college and graduate, and that's higher than national average, but I think the focus on a 4-year school, to define your success, everybody's not made to go to college. Having a technical trade is just as important, and I think that rate of success should play into it as well, and that's something we're trying to re-gauge and refocus on, because not everyone's situation can take the time to go to school for 4 years, because there's a lot to make it through 4 years. But if you can walk out of this life and have a trade, something that you can own your own business, because that's entrepreneurialism at the same time, to have a technical trade. So that's a new measure that we're trying to sort of change and refocus and re-gauge, but I think technical schools as well is an important thing to evaluate for success as well.
I think we have time for about like 3 questions. I see one here and then there's 2 right here, so that we can get you guys out of here around 2-ish. That young man was there. Oh, okay, sorry.
In the first 6 years of my life, I grew up in the private school system. When I went into the public and charter school system, I found that I wanted to put up a front or a metaphorical shield up. And I find it hard to get that shield back down. It's hard to cry or kiss someone because I feel like that's uncool in a sense. So, are there any ways that you as men have found ways to take your shield or front down?
Young man, you stole the show. I tapped on this earlier about defacing myself. Man, you asked a tough question. Jesus. I wish I could just give you one simple answer, because depending on the environment and where you are, we live in a world that requires you to, I would say requires you, because you have to make the choice, but everything's not appropriate. And all I can say is find your safe haven so that you feel where you can be who you want to be most of the time, where you want to be, because that's important, and know where that is. And I'm not even going to tell you a lie, because you sometimes have to be somebody else in order for you to be in this world, and that's just being honest. But just find a safe haven, and I'm going to defer to my other brothers to see if they can answer this better than me. But I just like your mindset, and the fact that you just knowing that is a powerful thing, young man. And I'm just going to tell you that real good.
I will second that. What an amazing question, and just the way you presented the question is remarkable. So if we all could just give this young man. But I would also say, do the work to understanding and falling in love with just you, right? Do the work and just fall in love with you. Because the thing that a lot of times happen, what we think is uncool actually becomes the cool. And it's all right to be different. Jamil talks about outcasts. One of my favorite artists is Andre 3000, because he fell in love with himself. When everybody was wearing the baggy jeans and the 3 size up, he would come with it in a genie outfit, or he would come with in a marching band outfit. And what was initially like, what is Andre doing? You started to see that he became a trendsetter. And so I would say, don't run away from you just being, what's your name? Ellison. Don't be afraid to just be Ellison, because what you realize is, as much as you're watching people, they're watching you. And then you can now become what is cool. So maybe if you cried in lunch, now let me tell y'all the funniest thing happened, right? I'm sorry for a second. We're in the 2nd week of our summer camp. And on last Thursday, we had an incident where one of the kids was body shamed. And we had a camp-wide conversation with everybody. And it got so emotional in the room, one camper cried, and then it was like a ripple effect. And we had 40 campers in the cafeteria just crying. It was so emotional, and a lot of them were crying for different reasons. But if that one person had not broken the wall to allow themselves to be emotionally vulnerable, it wouldn't have made the whole cafeteria feel like it was okay. So I'm saying all that to say, just fall in love with you and just be who you are. Regardless of what everybody is doing, they will eventually start to watch what you're doing, because it's okay to be different.
I would suggest 4 things, Ellison. Read Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. Read James Baldwin's, particularly Another Country, but read James Baldwin. Watch the Marlon Riggs documentary Black Is, Black Ain't, and Ethnic Notions. Those are just some of the sources that have helped me. I don't know if you ever really figure it out. I think it's an ongoing journey, but those are some of the writers, Black men that are part of our legacy, that have had some really great things to say about what it means to wear, navigate, grapple with the mask. Thank you.
You know, and one thing I would say, and building off what we talked about, finding those spaces that affirm you and those people that affirm you and love you. I've been lucky enough to have a group of friends, all 6 of us have known each other for 25 years. We've grown together, but we found each other out on the playground. We found each other in band. We found each other in those separate spaces that we are, some of us on the football field, and just have built this nucleus, and together we have been able to support. So if we felt like nobody else understood us, there was 5 other people that we could go back to and say, at least these people understand me. And that has affirmed and taken me very far. So best of luck to you, Ellison, man. Let us know how we can be of help in that journey, brother.
I'm gonna say one last thing to you, Ellis, because I don't even know, but that man right next to you, I think that's your father or something, right? No? Oh, where's the father? Somebody was by you earlier. Okay.
The original, the remix. Okay, I see that.
Okay, yeah, I know somebody was next to you in a black shirt. Okay. Your parents are your best resource. Nobody gonna love you like them. And this is coming from a guy who never had his parents. And I'm telling you, unconditional love, they know who you are and they'll help you to become who you wanna be. All right? So I'm gonna give you that piece of number 1 advice. So when you find yourself going inward or question yourself because you gotta go inward, let them know. Because that's the most important relationship in your life, all right?
We love you, man. We love you.
I don't even want to come up behind him. I was going to give the mic to somebody else. I'm like, how am I going to top that? But his comments or his question, these 2 gentlemen here, and then your last comment leads right into the question that I have, and that is this notion of Black fathers. Because oftentimes we have this conversation about men, but we don't have a discussion on the mechanisms through which we've learned how to be men and where we should have learned by, and the emotion and anger that's attached to our fathers, whether real or unreal. And I wrote this the other day, and I just want to, and I'm going to say it, and then I want to ask this question, and that is, when Black fathers are serviced and supported, they are more likely to be a solution to problems. Black fathers who are ignored and underserved are more likely to become the major source of problems. Thus, inherently and far too often, they are blamed for the problem. And unfortunately, the latter father is always considered in the analysis of framing and legitimizing the problem, however, never considered in the formulation of the solution. And so the question is, in your bodies of work, and my name is Kenneth Braswell, I run an organization called Fathers Incorporated, but I want to talk to you about getting involved and partnering with you guys. How important is it in the work that we're doing, particularly with our young boys and girls, this notion of also equally making sure that the fathers who are in or out of their lives are also served, affirmed, supported, and celebrated in their responsibility to be fathers and to change the narrative of Black fathers in our community from a deficit space to an asset space.
Just, to say, Kenny, you're doing great work, man. We met a few times, and the work that you're doing around fathers and helping young men get back into the lives of their kids is amazing. So Kenny does great work, and I think you heard the New York accent when he was talking. But so I'm mentoring a young man named Anthony. He's 8, and his father passed when he was like 1 month old in a car accident. And we've been together probably about 6 months now, and about 3 or 4 months into the relationship, he brought up his father. And I never wanted to bring it up because I thought that that made me uncomfortable, and I wanted to sort of let him take the lead on that. But he finally brought it up and talked about how he missed his father. And, you know, mentoring him, I sort of struggle with that boundary of, I don't want to be his father. I want to be like a father figure and be a guidance to him. But I think it's super important that we don't overlook that. There may be guys who've made some bad decisions who may not be present. I'm hoping through the work that we're collectively doing, we can bring them back into the fold and that they can be stood up. Because regardless of what happened, I think there's a way for the father still to be around and be a part of whatever's going on. Too often we're pulled into the fold of serving in that realm. But I preach to all of our mentors who come through our program. Many are men, many are white men who are mentoring black boys, that you're not this kid's father. You're an ally. You're not this kid's savior. That happens a lot in this work. And that you're here to provide support and work alongside this young person. But again, I just hats off to the work that you're doing to bring fathers back into the fold.
I'll answer this because I guess it's twofold for me why I even joined the 100. I helped raise my brother and I raised a stepdaughter. The hardest thing in life is that I think I've experienced so far as being a stepfather, because it's not my child, and then me not having my own parents was a tough job to be a parent to somebody that was not my child, and having my wife accept that I could love her the same way as if she was my own. And I say that as a man, once you have the understanding that your role is to provide and protect, it doesn't matter whether the blood that runs through their vein is that they're your child or not. And I think that any kid that you touch in life, you know, it's your job or duty to put your best forth effort towards that. And to say, you hear a lot, oh, there's not enough good black men out there, I mean, I don't let that control who I choose to be. And I think if we can sort of get past that, I think the rest will handle itself. But I mean, all these things that we all up here talk about and represent as an organization sort of help try and do that. And I don't think it's a single threaded solution. So I mean, it's kind of hard to answer that, but I do appreciate the work you're doing, and I mean, that's all we really can do.
Very short. So I came up in a world where it was either cool or uncool. So if you know me, you'll hear me say stuff like, that's cool, that's dope, that's hot, because that's how we determine whether something was acceptable or not. And so I think for all of those who have connections at media outlets, we live in a social media world and a media world, and I think these are the stories that we have to tell. You can personally tell these stories, and those who have these outlets, such as the news stations, radio, submit some of these really, really good stories to these outlets, so that now, seeing a father that is active, seeing a father that is doing the work now becomes cool.
Again, I want to respect people's time, so if you have to leave, we do, but, and then the panelists, if you guys have to go too, but we have a couple questions. I want to make sure that we spend some time hearing from our audience. So,
I just want to comment to the gentleman up front with the young man, what he was talking about music. The Bible says, train up a boy in which he will go. When he grows old, he shall not depart. I'm only saying that because I'm the son of 6 siblings. I have a mother, I had a father, had a stepfather, and none of my kids are involved, none of my siblings are involved in the system. They're well adjusted. Kids can hear music, can see things, things can happen. Long as the parents put the things that are proper in them, those kids will be just fine. You don't have to worry. Even if they drift to the left, drift to the right, if you put that information in them, they will be fine. I work with kids for the last 20 years in residential childcare. I've seen them come from DC, New York, across the country, California, Texas. We've had all kind of kids that have come into contact with me, and those that work with me. I just want to say that if the community here doesn't have a black man that's involved in a child's life, the community, the women are just as important if a male never touches the child's life. Don't stop telling the kids what they need to know, what they need, because when they need to pull that information back, when they're in the worst situation imaginable, when they have their hands up, they can come back to that information that you told them and they can build on it. It will save their life. Please speak to these young people when you see them. Tell them what they need to know. Don't let an opportunity go by where you do not say anything to these young people. The second point, I just want to emphasize the brother in the middle. I just want to appreciate you mentioning the fact that if a person doesn't have a black male in their life, that any male, any person that comes in contact with them, whether they white man, black man, burgundy man, I don't care who it is, gay man, if that person's willing to put themselves out there for that young person, it is valuable. They need that input in their life, no matter where they are. I work around mental health issues all the day, all the time. Depression among our community. Y'all mentioned about building black men up, the women supporting them, putting a battery in their back. That's so important. You don't know when a person is depressed. A person falls, hurt themselves, they go into a sort of depressed state. They don't know whether they're gonna get better. They don't know whether it's gonna get right. So anybody, any mental health professional, black, white, other, if they're willing to help you and listen, because suicide rates are so high among young people, we need them reaching out to anybody that's willing to listen and help. Please don't discourage them just because they don't see a black person. Talk to anybody that's willing to listen, support, and help them on their journey. Because depression and mental health issues and people willing to hurt themselves because they're in this kind of frame of mind, we gotta pull them out, we gotta let them know that it's gonna be all right.
Thank you.
In line with the theme of today, and I mean, I say this, paying it forward and paying tribute to the legacies of our past or whatever. I mean, to me, the biggest way you pay forward to the legacy of the past is by leaving your own legacy. Period. That's how we pay homage to people who chose to make sacrifices. And I'll say this to the father who said that about your son right there. I tell my stepdaughter all that when she said to me one time, "You're my buddy." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm not your buddy. I'm your parent." And that's just be it. At the end of the day, hopefully you teach him enough that when he's going down the wrong path, he hears your voice. And that's really it.
Then it's bringing it home.
Hello. First of all, thank you guys for taking the time out to just bring your wisdom and your knowledge. My name is DeJuan Paxton. I talk to a lot of brothers every day, almost. I consider myself a rather evolved human being. I'm open to and non-judgmental. As much as I can be, I am human. But I talk to a lot of brothers, man, who are established families, working, successful, working towards success, diligent in their work, and there's a lot of frustration on the fringes. And I mean, there's not gonna always be brothers that's gonna come to these types of functions or go to meetings and that kind of thing. And I'm out there, how can I be a better mentor to my brothers? Of course, the children, all day, every day. I'm a father, my son's 13, all day, every day for kids. But we need that as black men. What is an effective way to really connect with each other and just try to elevate each other?
One thing I have found just in building communities that you got to show up, right? I think what's been really great about my relationship with all these men that are on stage is that they show up for me and I've been able to show up for them. And it's not only saying that here these resources are, but like taking somebody to those resources, being with them, standing alongside with them, and supporting and lifting each other up, right? Like, because we can kind of make the list, but it's so much more difficult to just read a list and say, here's where I can go, but then actually getting there, right? Because there are so many barriers that get in our way. So if you can help somebody and get there and then be there with them and stand in that gap with them, I think that might be one way that I have found in building community.
Well, that's a start, you know what I mean? And that's where I am now. So it's like I'm here, I'm present, you know, but then there are things that I'm just not equipped to do or counsel on or, you know, that kind of thing. So what's the next step beyond that? You know, to really get to healing is what it is.
If it's about counseling and if it's something that you don't have the expertise in, then when they come to you, I think your job and your responsibility at that point is to try to connect them to someone in the field that they need the help in, whether that's a psychologist, whether it's a doctor, or whatever the case may be. And it may even be, hey, come to my crib, let's look on the internet together and let's find a therapist in your area. Like help and assistance can be given in so many ways, whether it's your ear, whether it's your voice, but it may literally be grabbing your brother by his hand and saying, hey, let's meet at Starbucks. You bring your laptop, I'm gonna bring mine. I don't know anybody, but together we're going to research and I'll go with you to the end. Whatever the case may be, your goal is to just get your brother the help that he needs.
Yeah, I think there are 3 things that I've learned about mentoring. The first thing I learned about mentoring is to not just try to give people what I didn't have, but also give them what I did. So when I first approached mentoring, I was like, look at all I'm doing, and no one ever did this for me. And and I realized there was some resentment I was also kind of having when I would get frustrated when people weren't moving as fast as I wanted them to move. But I had to step back and realize that that just isn't how to approach it. The other thing I learned is that you can mentor someone without calling yourself a mentor. Like, there are all kinds of ways. Like, I've been mentored in this space today without there being a formal thing, so it doesn't always have to be super formal. And the third thing I've learned is that you can also, you can mentor groups. Like, you can do almost like, be it sending out a job resource or an opportunity to like a group of people, so it doesn't always have to be like super individualized.
I have a real live example from this morning, and I'll sum it up in this, but real simple. When you move, God will move. And I'll give you that example from yesterday. I was talking to one of my colleagues, a brother, and struggling, trying to find out how to get his finances together, whatever. And I told him, go to Delta Community Credit Union. I'm telling you, go. It'll help you out. This morning, I'm driving in here. He texts me. He's like, man, it's so crazy. First person I saw that's helping me open my account is your wife. Real talk, like, my wife refinances car loan. Mentoring is not, and to his point, you're not trying to save a person, you're trying to guide a person. And that means putting them in front of the right people. When you see an opportunity that could help that person, expose them to it. I mean, they don't have to drink it, but at least you just guide them to it. I mean, that's literally all it is. I mean, and then when you move, other things will happen. It doesn't have to all come from you. So that's what I would say.
Y'all, I just want to ask you all to please give a round of applause for our panel, the cast of East Texas Hot Links, and our young man that presented earlier today. Thank you all. Give yourselves a round of applause for being here. We really appreciate it. This is the type of work that we here at True Colors really live for. We'd love to hear back from you. Please provide us some feedback out in the lobby. There'll be staff members who probably have on our badges. All of us will. We're also selling tickets to East Texas Hot Links, so if you'd like to purchase your ticket, use that code Juneteenth. You can use it outside. We'll do it. But we really, really just want to thank you all.